You know, kids, opportunity still knocks sometimes. And I was reminded of that fact over the past week in a couple of fun ways. And I'll tell you all about them on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. It's just kind of fun to watch how it all comes together. Now, you know, if you listened to last week's episode, that I went through this whole thing where I eventually purchased a set of Thai Pro X drum shells. Birch and basswood used, very gouged up. Thought I'd use them as a road kit, you know, but I used that as an object lesson in a couple of ways, right? About leaning into what presents itself, about following your curiosity, and I was curious about those drums, right? I also felt bad for them once I went to see them, and they seemed to have been neglected and not taken care of, you know, and they've been sitting in a pile somewhere for who knows how long, not being drums, you know, not being played. And I felt bad for them. And I know I'm not supposed to assign human emotions to inanimate objects, but in this case, I felt bad for the drums, so I bought them. And I have not stopped putting human emotions onto inanimate objects in the meantime, by the way, still a thing for me. But what's cool is, as you know, again from last week's episode, I was heading out on the weekend, on Sunday, you know, after church to go do a recording session for a local band, right? Laying down some drums on a single, and on a whim, thought I'd take the Thai Pro X snare drum with me. Now, I'll let you know that when I purchased the drums, the snare was the last thing on my mind, okay? I got snare drums. I got preferred snare drums that I like to use, and the Pro X snare I didn't really intend to use for much, but it came with the kit, so I brought it, you know? And normally to a session like I was about to do, I would take my maple snare drum, which is a lovely drum and it works great on folk albums and folk recordings, and I was about to do a folk song, all right? Kind of a Celtic, epic folk tune. Very cool song, and if and when it gets released, maybe I'll let you know where you can find it, all right? And the session went well, by the way, but the maple snare drum that I have has a practice head on it right now, okay? A mesh head, which I can hit with full force, but doesn't really make much sound. And that's how we practice, kids, when our wives are working from home, you understand? So I didn't swap out a head on my maple drum. I thought I'll take the Pro X drum with me, right? Because it's not maple, it is birch and basswood, but it is a wood snare drum. Holds a lot of the same properties as the maple snare drum, and on a folk Celtic kind of tune like this, I thought that would work better than my brass snare drum, all right? You don't care about this if you're not a drummer, and if you are a drummer, maybe you don't care about this either. The point is, I took the birch basswood Pro X snare drum with me to the session, okay? Because even though I knew that the studio I was going to had lots of snare drums to choose from, you still show up with gear, all right? You still show up with options. It's a pro thing to do, and I like to pretend to be a professional, okay? So I take in the Pro X snare drum that's been sitting for I don't know how long, literally collecting dust. I had to wipe this thing off, man, had to tune it up a little bit. And I brought it into the session, and I says to the engineer, I brought this drum. I don't know what it sounds like, really haven't played with it much, but maybe it'll work. Let's try it out. So we put it up on the stand, and we mic it up, and I start to play this drum that hasn't been played in I don't know how long, and the engineer says, "Hey, man, sounds pretty good." And I'm like, yeah, it does sound pretty good, man. And so we wound up using the Pro X snare drum on the recording session. And that's the object lesson, kids. Sometimes opportunity knocks, man. So here you have this drum sitting for we don't know how long doing nothing, not being a snare drum, being a dust collector. And maybe sitting there all that time thinking I'm never going to get to be a drum again. And then all of a sudden one day, a dude just walks into your life, scoops up you and your whole family, takes you home, and then the next day takes you out to a recording session, and all of a sudden you've gone from a drum that questions its very existence, questions its purpose in the world, knows what it came for, can't seem to do it, can't seem to make that happen. All of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, a person comes in and scoops you up, your life changes, opportunity knocks, and you are recorded on a professional recording session. That's how quickly it can change, kids. Here is a snare drum, doing nothing, lamenting its life, feeling hopeless, wondering how the future will resolve itself, and then in 1 second, opportunity knocks, and all of a sudden, you're in a recording studio being played and recorded. Doesn't that warm your cockles, kids? Doesn't that make you stop and think, maybe it's all gonna be okay? Not good enough for you? Not good enough for you, man? Not enough evidence to believe in opportunity? Then look no further than the sports world, where this plays itself out over and over and over again. And then look to our beloved Montreal Canadiens, les Canadiens de Montréal, les Glorieux, winner of 24 Stanley Cup championships, who this week fired their coach. All right, now the Habs started off like gangbusters. First 10, 11 games of the season, we're on fire. We're fighting for number one in the division. We're looking like a legit contender, which they have not looked like since they last won the Cup in 1993. And to be honest, weren't really thought to be a great contender then. It was supposed to be Pittsburgh's Cup to just sip from again. But you know, opportunity knocked for the 1993 Montreal Canadiens when Pittsburgh unceremoniously got dumped out of the playoffs, leaving a wide-open Eastern Conference. The Habs went on a run, won 10 overtime games in a row behind St. Patrick Roy, the legend. You know, opportunity knocked, and the Habs went on to win yet another Stanley Cup. 8-1-1 since. Ain't been close, Chris Kreider. But, you know, opportunity knocked. Okay, so we fast forward. Canadians on fire to start the season. Looking great, man. Scoring at a rate that's like, what's happening here? This team was filling the net full of goals, man. They looked dynamite. And then something happened. The wheels came off. I don't know. What can I say? I'll tell you that I got Carey Price as the number one goalie on my fantasy team. And my fantasy team ain't about to make the playoffs, okay? There's a correlation there. Wheels fell off last, 9 games-ish. And couldn't beat anybody, couldn't beat their grandmothers, giving up 4 or 5 goals a night. It was a freaking mess. It was toxic, and as we know, kids, from watching the sports world, when it's a mess and something's got to change, easiest thing to change is the coach, all right? So Claude Julien fired again by the Canadiens. Coach Claude let go. Kirk Muller let go as well, you know, club legend. Sometimes you got to make the hard decisions, kids. And you say, why are you telling me this? And I'm telling you this because if you don't believe in the Thai Pro X snare drum and its sudden change of fortune, consider the sudden change of fortune of Mr. Dominique Ducharme. A few days ago, Dominique Ducharme is an assistant coach working for the Canadiens, you know, the most storied franchise in the NHL. Now, he spent the better part of a couple decades building up a coaching resume. Coached junior, won the Memorial Cup. Coached in the minor pros, got hired as an assistant with the Habs. Right? Building this coaching career and thinking, no doubt, at some point in time of being a NHL coach, man. Being a head coach at the very highest level. Right? And he's preparing for that, but he doesn't know one day that it's all going to go down and suddenly opportunity will knock. All right, now it's rough on Claude Julien, right? To lose your job. Not saying it isn't. Rough on Kirk Muller, assistant coach, to lose his job as well. Okay, we get it. Opportunity doesn't necessarily knock for those two, but it will eventually. Down the line, opportunity will knock again. But it knocks for Dominic Ducharme, right? Because he's had this dream, these many years of being an NHL head coach, and he's an assistant, and he's doing his job, and he's laying the groundwork, and he's learning, and he's preparing himself for the day when opportunity will knock. And then one day, knock, 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 tappa, tappa, tappa on the door. The Canadiens fire Claude Julien and make him, Dominic Ducharme, the interim head coach. It happens quickly, man. Opportunity still knocks. Opportunity knocked for that Thai Pro X snare drum. Sitting in the corner collecting dust, and then a few days later, all cleaned up and being recorded in a professional studio. Dominic Ducharme spending the long years making that upward climb, and then in the space of a moment, the switch flicks, and you have the opportunity to be an NHL head coach. And here he is. And at the time of this recording, they've played one game under Dominic Ducharme, and they got blown out by the Winnipeg Jets, and they looked terrible. But that's not the point, man. What you do with the opportunity is down to you. My point to you, kids, is that the opportunity comes, all right? You can still hold out for opportunities. You prepare, you do the work, man. You improve your drumming, you improve your experience, and one day the opportunity comes. You prepare for that job you want. One day the opportunity comes, man. And I'm saying that to give you hope, kids. I'm saying that to give me hope. We see it in the sports world all the freaking time, man. There was a keeper playing for Arsenal. Emi Martinez came to Arsenal as a teenager, and he sat in the Arsenal system for 10 freaking years. That's a decade, kids. Patiently biding his time, watching keepers come and go. A litany of bad ones, by the way. A litany of accidents waiting to happen. Howlers, they call them in England. Arsenal had a whole series of these keepers come in and not be up to the job, and underneath them all sat Emi Martinez. Great potential. Emi Martinez never got the opportunity, and he spent 10 freaking years being the number 3 guy on the poll, playing for the under 23s, not even getting a sniff of first team football, just plying his trade, man, just practicing, just working, getting better, believing in his own ability, waiting for opportunity to knock. And then last season, Emi Martinez gets promoted to number 2, the backup guy to Bernd Leno, right? And what happens, kids? Bernd Leno gets knocked over in his own box, somewhat sneakily and dubiously and dirty. Injures his knee, man. Bernd Leno goes down, and opportunity knocks for Emi Martinez. And what does Emi Martinez do? Emi Martinez comes in and is lights out. 10 years of preparation, and the dude steps into the box. Leads Arsenal to an FA Cup win, their 14th. That's a record, kids. Provides incredible stability to the back end, plays lights out, and suddenly leaves Arsenal with this trouble. Oh, man. We knew we had Bernd Leno, who was the number 1 keeper. We knew Emi Martinez was a serviceable backup. We didn't really know Emi Martinez is a star. So all of a sudden, Arsenal has the enviable position of having 2 number 1 goalies, man. You got Bernd and you got Emi. And along comes Aston Villa, recognizing opportunity knocking, knowing that Arsenal can't keep both. Emi's finally had his shot. Emi is not riding the pine anymore. I spent 10 freaking years in this system waiting for my opportunity to prove myself. Opportunity knocks. Emi proves himself and beyond. Aston Villa comes in and says, we could use a great keeper. There's one. He just proved it. And so Aston Villa buys Emi Martinez from Arsenal, right? And, Emi Martinez took his opportunity, won himself an FA Cup as a starting keeper, and then found himself finally on another team with an opportunity to be the number 1. He has been that, and he's been dynamite, kids. And Aston Villa's been dynamite, and Emi Martinez is a big part of that. So it happens, kids. Happens in sports all the freaking time. Mr. Tom Brady. You heard of Tom Brady, kids? Does that name ring a little bell to you? Tom Brady, late round draft pick. Kind of an afterthought, man. Was passed over by every team like 6 freaking times before the Patriots finally drafted him. Tom Brady comes into the system. Confident, man. Bides his time. Does the work. Prepares for opportunity to knock. And then one day, starting quarterback Drew Bledsoe goes down with an injury, man. And in off the bench comes Tom Brady. And everybody went, who? Well, 20 years later, we know who Tom Brady is, kids, because he never gave that job back. All right, Bledsoe may have come in after his injury at one point. I don't know, briefly. Tom Brady came in and was a star and proved it immediately and went on to win the Super Bowl and more Super Bowls and more Super Bowls and more Super Bowls. And at the age of 77, just won another one with Tampa Bay, all right? Opportunity knocks, man. Travis Barker. Do you need more examples? Here's Travis Barker, a broke freaking kid and a dynamite dang rock and roll drummer, okay? And Travis Barker's working as a garbage man and plying his trade, playing for this band called Aquabats, okay? Now, Aquabats gets an opportunity, right? Aquabats gets an opportunity to open for a little punk outfit called Blink-182. Blink-182's on the rise, got a couple records out, doing okay, you know? This is when the California punk scene, the pop punk thing is really happening, or it's about to happen at least. And Blink-182's in the vanguard, all right? And they're playing shows, and they take out Aquabats on the road. And people notice right away that Aquabats has a pretty stellar freaking drummer, man. And then stuff goes down in the Blink-182 camp, and they're at a show, and I don't remember exactly the details of this, whether the drummer was sick or whether there was a fight and the drummer stomped off or something like that. But it's like Blink-182's got to go up like today, and they don't have a drummer because something happened. And so they go to Travis Barker, who's playing for the Aquabats, and they say, dude, can you fill in? And so Travis Barker, in the space of a couple hours, learns Blink-182's entire show, walks out in front of all those people and crushes it, man. Absolutely flawless. This dude had like a couple hours to prepare, man, and he learned it all and went out there and destroyed. Blink's drummer comes back from whatever happened. Stuff goes down again. They fire him. Who do they call, kids? Who do you call? Who do you call when suddenly you need a drummer? You call that dude who saw an opportunity, took it, crushed it. And he gets another opportunity out of that. Travis Barker leaves Aquabats. As soon as Aquabats see him play with Blink, they're like, oh, he's gone. We're going to lose him because he belongs in that band. They're crushing it, and he fits, man. Travis Barker joins Blink-182. They go into the studio. This is broke, garbage man, sleeping on couches, Travis Barker, right? They go into the studio, they make a little record called Enema of the State. And they sell 15 million copies of that record, kids. And Travis Barker becomes not just a very wealthy drummer, but a drumming freaking legend and one of the influences of a generation. Why? Preparation meets opportunity, man. When opportunity knocked, Travis Barker jumped. Emmy Martinez jumped. Tom Brady jumped. And Dominic Ducharme is jumping. He may have fallen into the ice when he did, but he's jumping. And that little Ty Pro X drum jumped too, man. And I'm here to tell you that opportunity knocks, okay? Opportunity knocks, kids. It'll knock for you. It'll knock for me again sometime. Because it's easy in the world we live in right now, especially for musicians where it feels like it's all just collapsed and gone away. You know, it's easy to feel like it's over, man. It's easy to feel like everything is shutting down and shutting down further and opportunity is over. You know, if you're kind of stuck like me, not knowing what to do with your life, not knowing how to direct your energy, I want to give you the encouragement to just believe that opportunity knocks, man. You got to hang in there. You got to prepare. You got to be as good as you can be. You got to be as ready as you can be. And when the opportunity presents itself, you got to jump, okay? So hang in there, kids. Opportunity will knock again. All right, time to put you out of your misery once again. Last week, it was the What's My Second Favorite Grocery Store Muzak Song game. And people waited with bated breath for me to say that it was Real Real Gone by Van Morrison. And that game inspired the Van Morrison game, which we launched last week, which was What's My Favorite Van Morrison Song? Now, we found out that Real Real Gone is my second favorite Grocery Store Muzak song, but Real Real Gone is not my favorite Van Morrison song, okay? And so I presented to you last week 6 options of what might be my favorite Van Morrison tune. They are Brown Eyed Girl, Into the Mystic, Have I Told You Lately, Someone Like You, Days Like This, and Gloria. And the votes came in from far and wide, kids. Everybody weighed in on what my favorite Van Morrison song is, but once again, not one single person answered the question right. And so I can't pretend to give a t-shirt to anybody, man, because nobody got it right. Nobody wrote in and said, John, I think your favorite Van Morrison song is Someone Like You. You never figured me for a sentimentalist, and if you've been listening, you should, kids. Now, I know Van's got some bangers, and I know Van's got a lot of hits, man. Van specializes in tapping your toes, but my favorite Van Morrison song is the ballad Someone Like You. Just a beautiful song, kids. It's just a beautiful song. There is a melody running through that song that warms your cockles, man. Makes you weepy. Makes you picture kind of a nice upscale kind of bar on a Saturday night. Might be Christmas time. You're drinking a martini. And it's like red velvet, dark colors, dark light, you know? And it's that kind of romantic song, man. Might be a dude playing a piano. You know, and it just brings that to mind for me. Feels like Christmas for some reason. Someone Like You. That is a beautiful song. If you have not heard that song, that's a movie. It's 100% a movie song. If you haven't heard Someone Like You by Van Morrison, it is just such a beautiful song, man. Warms your cockles, has an absolutely lovely melody. It's understated. Makes you a little bit melancholy, makes you a little bit sad. But you read the comments on YouTube when you go and listen to that song, and you read the comments, and it's like, oh, it reminds me of my first love, or I fell in love with this person, or I found my someone. Makes people feel happy, man. Makes people feel in love. And that's not a bad thing to feel, man, especially these days, you know? Someone Like You, my favorite Van Morrison song, and you'll find it by the time you listen to this on the John Huff Podcast, referenced on the pod playlist. Really love that song. It is a beautiful song. You should go and listen to it. Grab a martini, dance with your partner, you know? If you don't have a partner, pretend to dance with a partner. It is a beautiful song, and it is my favorite Van Morrison tune. Now, here's a new game. The game is, why don't you write in and tell me what game to play? Throw it at me, kids. What's my favorite Beatles song? That's a tough one. Eek. You have like a whole bracket system for that one, you know? It's like March Madness trying to guess your favorite Beatles song. What's my favorite Stones tune? What's my favorite King's X song? Come at me. Come at me, kids, with what game you want to play. What's my favorite, all right? But my favorite Van Morrison song is Someone Like You. Now, I got some listener feedback related to the Van Morrison game and related to other stuff on the podcast. I do appreciate your feedback, kids. Thank you very much for it. Johnny Thunder wrote in. Good old Johnny Thunder wrote in and said, hey, I like Real Real Gone too, but did you know that Van Morrison was not the first artist to record that song? No, I didn't, Johnny Thunder. And we go to you for the fun, in-depth music trivia stuff. Apparently, the first person to record Real Real Gone was in fact Tom Fogerty, brother of John Fogerty of CCR. Now, how about that, kids? I didn't even know there was a Tom Fogerty, but apparently he recorded Real Real Gone first, like 10 years before Van Morrison released it. So I went and I listened to that, and yep, it's Real Real Gone, and it's cool. It is not the same as Van's version, though. The thing about Van's version, which is cool, is that it's super upbeat, man. That's why it got my toes tapping at the grocery store, yeah? And it's got the horn section going, and you gotta move, man. It's one of those ones where you gotta move. You don't make a stank face, but you do gotta move. Tom Fogerty version's more, well, it's slower for a start. More of a, I don't know, man, like an Americana kind of thing. More of a, I don't know, rootsy kind of rock song. Not even a rock, I don't know. It's slower. It is not a toe tapper. It's much less pop. It's cool. It's a cool song. It's a great tune, man. You know, they say about a song, if it's a really good song, it should be a really good song just played on your acoustic guitar, right? Now, Real Real Gone, Van Morrison's got the whole horn arrangement and the band and the whole thing, right? But you could play that song, just chords on an acoustic guitar, and it would still be a great song. And the Tom Fogerty version is great too, because it's a great song. I prefer Van myself, but kudos to you, Tom. And kudos to Johnny Thunder for letting us know about that, okay? Also got a message from Sister Gwendolyn. Sister Gwendolyn, who you'll recall from the various anecdotes about Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes. She wrote in to say, hey, Olivia Newton-John, magic, love that song. She didn't know that Xanadu was such a panned movie. You know, that was news to her, as it was news to me. But she likes the Olivia Newton-John magic song, and so do I, and thanks so much for writing in to say that. I gotta give a shout out to Elena. This is gonna cause a little bit of disturbance in Elena's home, because Elena is my one under 20 listener. She's the one, kids. She's the one I go to when I gotta get some insight from the hip cool kids, all right? Now, she's the one who told me that the flicks is not a thing. A little while back, I wondered if the kids call Netflix the flicks. Hey man, did you see that show on the flicks? Are you watching Queen's Gambit on the flicks? I thought the kids would be saying that. I thought that's a hip thing. The kids are not saying that, and Elena told that to me, all right? I'm going to start making the flicks a thing. Going to put it on a t-shirt or something like that. Hey man, you watching the flicks? I think that's cool, you know? I don't know if people say cool anymore either. I tend to do retro slang. Like I say groovy all the time. That's straight up 60s, you know? And I kind of like retro slang, and I don't know. I say cool and I say groovy, man. And I say the flicks. Apparently people don't say the flicks, but I'm going to give a shout out to Elena. It's going to cause consternation because her dad is our old friend Jay, all right? And the war begins between who gets more shout-outs on the pod, Elena or her dad, Jay, all right? Today we're talking Elena because Elena did something that I applaud and appreciate, man. Now, you know with my spinning segments, I'm endeavoring to listen to music I would not normally listen to, okay? There are exceptions to the rule, like the Black Swan record, but generally speaking, I'm going after stuff that I wouldn't normally check out. And I gotta give credit to Atlanta because she is a under 20 university student. And she went and, she listens to this podcast. There are not many of them, kids. Not many under 20s listening to this show, all right? So credit to her for that. She even has a dang t-shirt. But she also went after the last episode and listened to some Believer. She went and she listened to some live Believer. Now this is, as I've talked about many times, one of my favorite bands in the world, a unbelievable speed / thrash metal band initially from the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Released 3 records that would crush your freaking skull, then disappeared, returned in the kind of late aughts, 2009 or so, as more of a prog thing. Still a bit of thrash, then a bit of prog, and then another record that was definitely prog, kind of Tool, kind of Perfect Circle kind of vibe, right? Elena, who, she's into Taylor Swift, man. She's not into the thrash metal. So she went and she listened to some live Believer, man. And after she got out of the hospital, she came and she said, not her cup of tea, but she was amazed when that voice came out of that dude, as you should be. When Kurt Bachman, PhD cancer researcher, opens that mouth and does the Believer voice, man. Really freaking love the thrash metal, really freaking love Believer, and I give kudos to Elena for sampling some music she wouldn't normally listen to, all right? Now, when she gets over the concussion syndromes, maybe we'll introduce her to some more of that stuff. So kudos to you, Elena. Thanks for listening to this show, and thanks for checking out The Believer. And would you believe, speaking of believers, how many freaking people love Chuck Mangione, man? Now, you may not see the custom artwork that I do for the show, okay? Every episode, I do a custom piece of art photo, right? And if you only listen on Apple or some of the other platforms, you probably just see my podcast art come up with your episode. But if you're on Facebook and if you're on some of the other platforms, you'll see the custom art that I do for each episode. And last time around, I took a shot at mimicking the Chuck Mangione Feels So Good album cover, right? And on that album cover, he's clutching his flugelhorn, and he's got this dreamy smile on his face. So there's me clutching my throw-up bucket from the last tour with a dreamy look on my face. And so I post that on the Facebook because it's funny, and it lights up with people saying how much they love Chuck Mangione, love Feels So Good, love that record, and I was amazed. And I don't know if it made people listen to my podcast or not, but I was stunned by the reaction I got from people who love Chuck Mangione. So thanks to all you people who commented on my Facebook photo of the Chuck Mangione album cover. Who knew? It's a great song, and Chuck is great, and that's a great record, and you can hear Feels So Good through radio edit. You don't have to do the whole 10-minute epic. You can do the 3.5-minute radio edit if you go to the John F. podcast referenced on the pod playlist. So thanks to everybody who wrote in. Thanks everybody for your comments and feedback. I certainly do appreciate it. And feel free to contact me, kids, if you got stuff you want to talk about based on this particular episode. If you got comments, if you got questions, if you got stuff you want me to talk about, by all means, send it my way. john-huff.com or via the Facebook or, Twitter, the Instagram. I'm out there. I'm findable. Send me a message. Love to hear from you. And I think it's about time we spin a record. Gonna spin it quick, all right, kids? I'm endeavoring to spin records quick. And today, this is gonna be a bit of a tricky one, all right? Because I'm recording this on Saturday, right? Super Saturday. Bit of sunshine outside, it's not hot Friday night. Hot Friday night, the bass comes into my voice. It's like, hey there, all you greasers, On hot Friday night, that's what goes down. I keep the lights down low, get that vibe going. But today, it's Super Saturday and the sun's out. And it's going to be a little bit tricky to spin this record because it only came to my attention just yesterday. But anytime Alice Cooper releases a record, man, you gotta jump on it. And I do that out of respect and honor to the great Ken the Zen, who is the biggest Alice Cooper fan that I have ever met. And it's via Ken the Zen that I've developed a new appreciation for Alice Cooper because we cover a bit of Alice. We play I'm 18. Play a bit of Alice. And I always dig Alice, I got nothing against Alice. I just haven't really followed Alice since, Kane Roberts was in the band. You remember Kane Roberts, kids, the big muscle man, who played lead guitar, and there's a video, I swear I'm not hallucinating, there's a video for some song from the 80s where they're, playing live, and Kane Roberts reaches down and, grabs this girl by her bikini top and curls her, lifts her up with one. I swear I'm not making that up. That's in a video somewhere. Somebody tell me what video that's from. But I haven't really followed Alice since those days, all right? Now, Alice is one of the rare bands that managed to bridge from a 70s heyday and be accepted by the 80s metal movement, There's a handful of them. Van Halen is one. Kiss is one. AC/DC is one. Whitesnake, certainly Whitesnake, all these bands to a certain extent had to morph into what the 80s was about. But the same thing did not occur in the fault line between the glam metal scene and the grunge scene. Glam metal bands tried, by the way, so you get Dokken or something releasing what sounded like a grunge album. And everybody raised their eyebrows and went, dude, what? Like, it just didn't work. I can't think of a single band that was a glam band with the spandex, with the leather, with the hair, with the whole thing, and then turned up one day wearing lumberjackets and whatever boots they used to wear, and turned up and went, did away with the harmonies and the lead guitar solos and started playing grunge. Everybody was like, yeah. But there was a series of bands from the 70s, Kiss, AC/DC, Van Halen, etc., Whitesnake, that bridged that gap, that came over and were accepted into the glam metal scene. And Alice Cooper was one of them. And so you had the Raise Your Fist and Yell record, had Freedom on it, and then later you had Poison. Like Alice had some legit big hits and was in the magazines, etc., associated with that scene. In some ways, some of these bands were the pioneers of the glam movement. Don't get me wrong, all right? Like the glam movement was based a lot on Kiss and Alice Cooper, right? The makeup, the whole thing, and the sound of Van Halen. So these were the pioneers of the movement. Def Leppard was not a pioneer of the grunge movement 10 years ahead of its time, I guess. But I don't think we accepted everybody into that glam scene. And some of the bands from the 70s kind of died away, in the early 80s. But we accepted Alice, man, and I liked Freedom from Raise Your Fist and Yell. But the thing is, I think to a certain extent, those mid-80s kind of glam metal sounding Alice records are not really Alice, man. It was in vogue at the time, and Alice was staying to a certain extent relevant. But the real deal Alice Cooper is the 70s Alice Cooper, man, and what's been released more recently. Not a glam metal act, a rock and roll act for sure, but very much a 70s rock and roll act. And what you get on the new Alice record, Detroit Stories 2021, is kind of the vintage, legit, real Alice Cooper, okay? And what strikes me about this album, I have not had long with it because I just got it. Just came out the other day. Just yesterday, man. And I got a frantic message from Ken the Zen, like, new Alice Cooper, huzzah! It's like the biggest day of all for Ken the Zen. And if you go back through our Rotisode archives, he talks about where this love for Alice Cooper comes from. Back in the early days of the pod, man, when we used to do the Rotisodes, man, Ken the Zen and Denny and me, we talk about music and stuff. Ken talked a lot about Alice Cooper. You can go back and you can hear that somewhere. So I got to listen to Alice, but I don't spin records I don't like, kids. I do not talk negatively about albums on this thing, okay? So it's like Alice had to deliver, and he did. And what strikes me about this record is the sheer versatility of it, okay? I'm not going to go track by track. What I want to do with the spinning thing now, when I do them, is I want to narrow it down to 3 or 4 songs. And that's very tricky to do on this record. It was easy to do on the Phoebe Bridgers record because there's a level of consistency and tone to that record. So you could take one or two, and basically illustrate the vibe of the whole record with those. With Alice, you cannot do that, okay? There's 14 or 15 tracks on this thing, and they jump all over the freaking place. I got some punk happening here. I got some hard rock happening here. I got some 70s flavored rock. There's some blues happening. From track to track, you don't quite know what you're going to get from this record. And that's Alice, man. There are times when I thought I was listening to the Rocky Horror Show. There's some schlocky 70s kind of stuff. And Alice was a pioneer of schlocky 70s stuff, okay? So it comes pretty naturally to him. But to the best of my ability, I've kind of nailed this. I've kind of narrowed it down to what I think illustrates the record, okay? So I'm going to talk about the song Go Man Go, which is a straight up Ramones/Sex Pistols punk song, all right? Go Man Go. It's got that chanty. It's got a very much a Ramones kind of guitar riff happening. And the chanty kind of chorus, Go Man Go. It is a straight up freaking 70s punk song, man. Picture leather and blue jeans, all right? Not California pop punk, not your Travis Barker, not your Blink-182. Not your Face to Face, not your Green Day. Legit 70s punk, man. 3-chord punk. Go Man Go. And that's Alice Cooper. And I gotta say that Alice sounds great, man. Alice's voice sounds great. He sounds like Alice Cooper. It's really weird how some artists who span generations like this, you listen to the early stuff and the voice sounds one way. And then 40 years of whiskey later, it sounds somewhat different, you know? Alice Cooper sounds like Alice Cooper. The voice remains the same, and he's in his early 70s now, and it sounds like he did when he was in his 30s. It's really cool, and I like it. And Alice sounds great on this record, sounds great on that song. Another song I gotta point out, which is a freaking weird one, is Our Love Will Change the World, because this is the freaking Partridge Family, man. It's a 60s pop tune. I mean, it is a cover. It is a cover of a song by a band called Outrageous Cherry. All of this is Detroit, man. This record is Alice's ode to Detroit. You know, he came up in Detroit, all right? There's a lot of Detroit artists, a lot of Detroit musicians playing on it. A lot of members of the original Alice Cooper band. That's another big thing for Ken the Zen. He loves that the original Alice Cooper band is actually playing on this album, okay? And, I mean, there's a list as long as your arm of people who played on this thing. Dudes will want to know that Larry Mullen Jr. played drums on one of these tracks. I believe it was track 14. So they brought in the U2 drummer. Dudes is a big U2 guy. So Larry Mullen Jr.'s on this. And a bunch of the original Alice Cooper players are on this thing, which is really cool too, man, if you're into the nostalgia kind of stuff, right? And this tune, Our Love Will Change the World, is a straight up 60s. The lyrics are super dark, but the vibe is super happy. It's the Monkees, man. It's the Partridge Family, but it's got this inflection of Weezer. You know how Weezer can do that, like a poppy, happy song, but then there's like some rock and roll in it too? Weezer are masters at that. Alice does it on this cover of Outrageous Cherry, Our Love Will Change the World. There's a tune called Social Debris, which is a ZZ Top flavored kind of hard rock song. So you get the hard rock element, 70s kind of hard rock vibe off of this, right? And then maybe my favorite song, it's hard for me to say after only a couple listens, but maybe my favorite song on the record is $1,000 High Heel Shoes. And I think this is about strippers. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't dug too deep in the lyrics. The lyrics are fun. The lyrics on most of this album are fun. You know, they are stories, and they don't take themselves too seriously. This is another great thing about Alice. For all the schlock, for all the shocking stuff in the stage show, and his sheer immortality in the music scene, Wayne and Garth bowing down, kissing his ring, Alice Cooper does not take himself seriously, which is one of the things I love about him. It's one of the things I love about Ghost. You know, Ghost is one of Alice Cooper's legacies. You trace it all the way back, man. You trace the lineage. And Ghost picked up on not taking yourself too dang seriously, right? So there's a lot of comedy running through it. And there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek running through this album. And $1,000 High-Heeled Shoes is a lounge song. There's like a doo-wop thing happening, and this whole kind of backup singers doing the doo-wop. And Alice's voice doesn't sound like Alice either. It's a Blues Brothers song. It's a Huey Lewis song from the 80s. $1,000 High-Heeled Shoes. And it's a toe tapper, man. And I really, really like it. But then you go to this song called Drunk in Love, which is a blues song. Straight up blues chord progression played as a blues song. Slow, grinding, heavy blues song, man. So you've gone from the Partridge Family to Huey Lewis to ZZ Top to a blues song. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate here, man, is the versatility of this Alice record. You could put on one song and you'd be like, I hate this record. This sucks. This isn't my bag at all. And then you walk away. That's why you got to listen to the whole album, kids, especially with somebody like Alice Cooper, because what you get is a hodgepodge, man. What you get can be all over the freaking place. So if you're going in here to listen to Freedom from Raise Your Fist and Yell, you ain't going to find it here, okay? There's no glam metal on this thing, all right? You're not going to find Poison, the song or the band. What you're going to find is a very eclectic collection of cool songs, and each one kind of stands on its own. There's a tune called I Hate You, which is another punk song. But it's a punk song sung by the Muppets. And I don't 100% get the story behind this, but I think the lyrics are basically the original band members bagging on each other, hating each other for the way they perform or the way they act or the way they look or whatever. Also tongue-in-cheek, also very funny, but the voices are the freaking Muppets. Not a lot of people could get away with this, okay? But when you're Alice Cooper and you've been a legend for 50 freaking years, you can get away with the song I Hate You, sung by Muppets. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention the song Hanging On by a Thread, which is the one song in here that is taken seriously, okay? And this is a song written about suicide prevention, written about mental health because of COVID, man. So it's written in response to how messed up freaking COVID is and how much that's affecting people's mental health. And it is. I've said before that the great legacy of this thing is going to be what it does to people's mental health. You know, the next wave of this may be mental, not physical. I've felt it. I've been pretty upfront about how I felt it. How I continue to see other people feeling it, you know. I don't want this world anymore. I had that thought recently. Alice recognized it. He released this song called Hanging On by a Thread. And, you know, the verses are spoken word. It's just Alice talking to you. It's like a shot in the arm. It's like, I'm here for you, man. It's like you got 7 billion brothers and sisters. We're all here for you. We're all in this together. And it's Alice just encouraging and just talking, right? And then this chorus, which is great. This is a great song. This is a 90s tune. You know, not exactly a grunge song, but a 90s rock and roll song. It's dark, very hooky, but about serious stuff, man. And it ends with the suicide prevention hotline phone number. This is a super socially conscious tune, man. And kudos to Alice for doing it, you know. Alice is a wise man, okay? Great golfer. And a wise man, done some living, okay? 73, 74 years old, rock and roll. He's done it all, man. The good and the bad. Alice Cooper knows what he's talking about, you know, and he can be tongue-in-cheek and schlocky and Rocky Horror Show throughout, you know, a lot of this album. But when there's serious stuff to talk about, he talks about serious stuff. And that's a very good song. You know, quite apart from the message, quite apart from the social consciousness of it, it's just a great song. It's one of my favorite songs on the record, just musically, and it's great. And I'm not going to say anything else about the tunes on this album, but I am going to recommend you check out Alice Cooper's new record, Detroit Stories. Very eclectic, very fun, loads of different styles, and you can be a little bit amazed, you know, by the different directions that Alice Cooper goes, especially if your vision of Alice Cooper is Kane Roberts lifting up some girl by her bikini top. Gonna sign out, kids. I've had a lot of fun today. I hope you've had a lot of fun too. I hope you're doing okay. By all means, do drop me a line. And I know I say this a lot lately, but I still mean it. Please give me a rating and review. I don't like podcasters who beg for this, but I'm going to be one of them. It freaking helps me. So please, you know, if you're listening on Apple, just shoot me a 5-star or a 4-star, you know, whatever warms your cockles. If you can take 2 seconds and write me a little review, it helps me. It helps the show get noticed, you know. It helps me grow just a little bit, and I would appreciate it if you would. And rate me wherever you listen to shows. I do appreciate it. Drop me a line. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you think about stuff. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. Hope you're doing okay. Hope your cockles are warm. Hope the sun is shining wherever you are. I do appreciate you listening so much. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll check you later. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. If you want to know more about the program, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com and click on podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me at JWSHuff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you, and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. Just in case you or somebody you know needs it, the suicide prevention number in Canada is 1-833-456-4566. If you need it, call it, all right?